Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. Coach Em here today has the absolute pleasure, notice I'm singing in my introduction this morning, to interview a wonderful friend, an awesome human in Tracey Ezard, who is a speaker, author, educator, and does a lot of group facilitation coaching and so many other things. Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Em. I can't believe, talk about an oversell in the first 2 minutes. Listeners, hope we somehow get up to the standard that you're used to on this beautiful podcast.
Absolutely. And I hadn't even told them your bio yet, but anyone who writes 3 books, let alone writing their 4th, The Buzz, The Glue, Ferocious Warmth, and we've got another one on the way. Tracey, I love everything that you're about, especially as we talk about trust, collaboration, learning within teams, supporting leaders, balance the reality of the results, and building a strong culture. We're going to have a wonderful chat about so many of those things. But I always love a pattern break question. You'd expect nothing less for the first one from me.
Yep.
So I'm going to go with, what object is leadership?
It's a Malteser. I don't know, some of your listeners might not know what a Malteser is. I don't know, it might be an Aussie thing. I'm not sure, but Malteser is this beautiful lolly where on the inside is honeycomb. It's a round ball. Inside is honeycomb, and on the outside is this beautiful, crisp layer of chocolate, right? So leadership is all about being able to have this beautiful center of heart, emotional intelligence, the ability to connect and bring a sense of empathy and compassion to the work. But on the outside is the strategy and the thinking and the structure that allows people to really thrive within the culture that you're creating. So, yeah, a Malteser.
A Malteser, that... Already, I love it. I love Maltesers, and I love that concept. So let's go there first. And I'm thinking very recently where I've spoke to a few leaders who walk in the room and they've got that outside layer of where they present themselves as very confident, and then we peel back that outside chocolate layer, and sometimes there's a lot of fragility underneath that.
You betcha.
You betcha. So when I say that, what comes up for you about even that authentic presence and, the 7 seconds that it takes to form that first opinion of a leader?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on getting that balance between the outside of who you present to the world and who you are?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go too deep straight away, but you know what? We met through NLP, by the way. Shout out to all our NLP mates listening. But Tracey, go anywhere you want with what I just scrambled.
Yeah, well, it's a huge question, isn't it? So many of us are caught up in impression management. So we walk in and we go, what do I need to put forward, rather than how am I stepping and coming forward authentically as who I am? This is such a big question, Em.
It is.
When I look at, my leadership approach is ferocious warmth, right? So it's the ferocity to really care about what you do and the people you do it for. It's the ferocity to move forward and be courageous and be brave, but to do it in a way, we need to lead transformation, that's what leadership is all about. But it's doing it with people. And so how do we inspire and connect people and create that connection to them? I think if we are not doing the work on ourselves, then the inside of the Malteser is fragile. The inside of the Malteser is this untapped space of who we are and what we stand for. I have a real particular view of authenticity, because quite often people say, well, we just, we've just got authentically ourselves. Now, I know people who have suffered from really toxic, authentic leadership. the person is authentically bringing some really bad leadership behaviors to the table and expecting people to put up, like suck it up, because that's who I am. And so I always see that authenticity is about trying to bring our best selves and knowing that we're going to stuff it up because we're all human, bringing this humility with us. So I think the leaders that you might have been referring to, Emma, are the ones that there is a fragility there, absolutely. And so there's a bravado that gets put forward that means that don't be tapping on that outside shell because I'm not going to let you into the other side because I'm actually a bit scared of it myself.
Everything begins with self-awareness, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
doing the work on ourselves and being a lifelong learner, which we are, and I know people listening to this podcast are lifelong learners. They're right. How can we take something and add it back into our leadership toolkit?
Yeah.
So tapping into the heart, let's go there first. Now let's go on to the inside of that Malteser, right? How can I tune in and listen to what my heart sings? Like, what are some of the ways that you work with leaders in listening to the heart?
One of the things I love getting them to do, which, it's actually something that one of my coaches got me to do quite a few years ago, Leslie Clue, an amazing woman in New Zealand, just phenomenal in terms of how she gets you to think about yourself. But she would get me to write down on a page and just do imagery or do whatever I wanted that was about my soul loves. So what is it that my soul loves that actually just brings me this joy? When I work with leaders, I get them to talk about what are their joy bubbles? What are the things that the little moments that have actually helped them to really tap into the stuff that helps them to stay centered. It's a very big part of Ferocious Warmth leadership, which is the head and the heart coming together in the right context. But if we're out of balance, if we're disconnected from ourselves, then actually what we're going to be doing is our strengths are just going to become our shadows and we are going to be that fragile self. So being able to tap into our heart work is really being able to sit with the discomfort of identifying where is it that, I'm not fulfilled or that's not working properly or I'm feeling discombobulated or what is it that's going on for me? But just as much that space as looking into what's happening for me when I am in flow. From an NLP perspective, what's in my circle of excellence when I am absolutely at my very best? What are the things that bring me the joy to be able to do the harder stuff? And so I find, that even getting us to think about our strengths is something that a lot of people don't even take the time to do. It's often, from an Australian perspective, can be that tall poppy thing of, I always need to be looking at what do I need to get better at rather than where my strengths are. But I think going there is a good place to start. And there's so many really good tools you can use around that. I often just I've got strength cards. I just get people to share stories. When we share stories about stuff, the neural pathways go straight to that situation. We can change our state as we know, when I'm doing a keynote or when I'm doing a workshop, I get people to stand up, talk to people they don't know, share something really joyful from your work. And the energy in the room just goes ballistic, of course. And we get this buzz, funnily enough. That's what the first book was on, the buzz, the energy. But being able to start with that stuff, how do I identify, what's my emotional literacy about how I'm feeling right now? They're all really good little steps forward, I think we can take.
And definitely the statistics all back that up. The one I was just reading recently around the quiet quitting and the loud quitting and only, the Gallup survey was around 20% of the workforce being engaged.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, when managers focus on people's strengths, it improves by up to 67%. So that's, that's backed by that. But I love this story piece of really hitting those neural pathways. So go on, tell us a story of joy in your life.
A story of joy. So a few years ago, I found out, 18 months ago, I found out that I had 3 almost blocked arteries and I needed to have open heart surgery. So, the surgeon opened me up like a Coles chicken. Family said, geez, Mum, didn't realise you even had a heart. Everyone was shocked. And a lot of people sort of said, oh, you're the last person we can imagine having to have open heart surgery and triple
Totally.
bypass and all that sort of thing. So because I've been doing a whole lot of work over the years around really making sure I had the supports around me when things go down. How do you make sure you got your safety nets to be able to do it? So, I had my coaches, I've got my really strong relationships with families and friends. I do things that bring me joy. And so I woke up out of the anesthetic and went, I'm treating this as an experiment, right? Because I just really wanted to approach the whole thing in a mindset that was about looking at the possibility and the opportunity of life. So that whole thing, whilst it could have been really traumatic, I actually went, wow, I am still here. I could have dropped dead carrying that 20-kilo luggage that I did in the heat in Perth a week before, but I didn't. And now I've got this souped up, new, improved heart traveling on all 8. So that in itself was, how do I see that with joy? But one of the joys within it was, my bones were really sore because they do all sorts of things to open you up and everything, cut down your blah, blah, blah. And so I was knitting and around the titanium clips and everything was knitting, but everything was, oh my God, sore. And I can remember crying with joy one day when my daughter Layla, who was 20 at the time, so she's 21, almost 22 now, was sitting beside me on the bed or on the couch, I can't remember where it was, and she was massaging me. She was massaging my back, just really gently around the ribs and where the muscles were so sore. And even though I was in pain, it was actually so joyous, like the love that she was giving me. But not only that, I'd learned over the years to accept the love, and that was something in my journey over years of going, I don't need help. I help. Thank you very much. I'm a great overfunctioner. Thank you very much. To be able to just sit there in this moment of love and just be really joyful about it. So
I'm pausing for effect just to breathe into that beautiful story. And yeah, just also everyone out there, just keep your health up to date. Go get regular checks.
get your heart checked, have a calcium score. I'd had none of that until all of a sudden my cholesterol went up a little bit and my heart went out a little bit of rhythm. And then when the doctor said, oh, your calcium scores, cardiologist said, calcium scores 301. And I went, oh, is that good? And he said, Tracey, it should be 0. I went, oh, righto, okay.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to transformation. Well, not back to, because that experience is transformational. So thank you for sharing that. You do a lot of work, I know, not just in Australia, New Zealand, and throughout Asia. Especially I want to talk about schools for a moment, if we can, and the amazing work that you're doing with principals and leaders in schools. Just about, I want to talk about what's happening with teaching and education, and what is your work focusing on when you go into these schools?
So my work focuses on what's the leadership and the professional cultures that are actually going to help our students thrive in a really complex world. So, but not only that, how do we thrive as professionals? So this is where it translates across all sectors. Do we have a really strong learning culture in our team? Do we have a strong learning culture in the professionals in our organisation? Because if we don't, then what we probably are okay with is just mediocrity, or at its worst, toxicity, right? So, so I go in and work with schools around how do we create a really authentically, you go into any environment, you go into any team, you go into any classroom, go into any executive meeting, and you will hear the language of learners And to do that, to be language of learners, we have to bring this curiosity, this willingness to challenge the status quo. And so education so needs to do this. And there is so many amazing people doing this work in education. One of my goals is, with my books, etc., is shine a light on great exemplars of this, who are saying, let's not continue doing education the way it's always been done. How are we ensuring that we are creating systems of equity and excellence, which is often a really key driver for most systems, but it's authentically being done? And much of it comes down to what is the quality of the relationships that we have in our teams, in our leadership teams, to be able to do that. And then that comes back to what's the self-awareness that I bring as an individual around my ability to step out of my comfort zone, my ability to be able to listen and accept conversations that are about my growth, being willing to be stretched. What are my strengths, but what's my stretch? And am I willing to look at that stretch? And when we do that as a collective, it becomes even harder, doesn't it? That's why I love working in coaching groups. How do we step into a vulnerability with each other where we're being courageous about, this is what I've got to learn, or this is where my stretch is, or geez, let's look, because hey, this isn't working, guys and gals. What is it that we're doing to actually work together to address the stuff that isn't working, but also strengthen the stuff that is? So it goes across all, sectors can do exactly this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's something that just happened to me very recently. I pulled out that exercise that we did on Victoria Street, walking in somebody's shoes and giving.
Yeah.
I literally pulled that out a couple of days ago.
Right.
And here's the interesting thing. You calibrate someone walking, and then you're in a group of three, and then one person walks behind the person, really trying to walk in their shoes, literally. And then the third person is observing and potentially giving some feedback or offering some what they're doing well, and maybe asking a curious question. And in this particular moment, people were so self-conscious that it was almost like they were cracking jokes because they were uncomfortable. And I think that comes out a little bit in leadership. Instead of us stretching and leaning into the discomfort, we sometimes crack jokes and laugh and say, oh, this is a stupid exercise, or instead of just going, you know what, actually, this is uncomfortable and I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to cut out the sort of that joking part of it. And when they did that, because I was like, well, one or two ways this can go. You can have a go at it, like authentically, or you can continue the way you're going. And when they did that, the insights were quite profound. And as a coach and a facilitator, one of my biggest aha moments is after the exercise, I love just asking, what did you discover?
Yeah, that's it.
Because what one person discovered and another person discovered sometimes is completely different.
Absolutely.
Rather than me putting my map of the world onto somebody.
I think that's some of the biggest things for me around when you do get people to share and debrief in a group context. You get these beautiful journeys that you go on that if you had just given the way you see it, they never would have gone there. So it's letting go, isn't it? And I know this is pure coaching 101, but I think it's quite amazing how we go, well, this is what it must look like, because it's the irony of the whole exercise we were just talking about in a way, isn't it? That when we don't ask people, so what do you think? What did you discover? What was your experience? We're actually saying being in your model of the world isn't important. So I think some of the laughing that you're referring to is the discomfort, but I think it's also some people going, well, why do I have to get into someone else's model of the world? Well, why? Like, what does that give me? And sometimes it takes some really good experience, isn't it? Do you to be able to uncover what you get out of that? What did you find post that? Like, what sort of conversations were going on?
The conversations really opened up into the minute that I let go of trying to do it right.
Yeah.
I actually I could feel what they were feeling.
Nice. Yeah.
And I think sometimes in all areas of life, we want to get it right. We want to do the right thing. So it has a good intention.
Yes.
Often we get in the way of our own learning
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. And I find, like, so I like using perceptual positions, which is so similar to that, except it's not a walking model, but for people who aren't aware of it, it's, you get people to think of a situation, and I say, where's a conversation you had that it didn't quite go where you wanted to go, and then people stand in position one, they run the camera from their eyes. What did they hear? What did they say? But what were they thinking as well? How were they holding their body? So they do the physiology. And then we shake that off, move to second position, and you run it from the other person's eyes. And what can you imagine them thinking and feeling, etc. Shake that off, and then you go into the meta position, and you just go, what if you're an alien observer? What would you see? And it's always really fascinating that some people find second position quite hard. Some people are the opposite. They go, I get where the other person came from so strongly. I find first position really hard, of where was I at? What was I doing? And I just think those insights are just gold for us to be able to really explore that our model of the world, is really, I call it our ignorant truth. That the way we see the world is not truth. It's not even our truth. It's our ignorant truth, because there's all this stuff on the outside that we don't know and we're not sure of. And it's someone else's perspective, or we haven't asked the question. And I think in the world today, we are really stuck where people are getting their own ignorant truth, and we're not asking questions and stepping outside to try to understand each other more. We're just drawing battle lines. So us as leaders, or us as coaches, helping leaders to be able to understand that the world is not just the way we see it, is a big part of the work, isn't it?
It is a huge part of the work. And even just reading a lot of your stuff, you see it here, learning within teams, team cultures of learning, expert as learner.
Yeah.
So in terms of what we're talking about, you're talking about really just any way we can, and that the word you picked up on before, which I think is a superpower of a modern leader, is curiosity.
Yeah.
Being able, if you're curious, then you're going to be a lifelong learner. And sometimes in schools, that curiosity is sapped out of you, and
Absolutely.
Sometimes you're not encouraged to be curious.
Absolutely.
And
the research shows that really clearly as
it?
well.
Right.
That where our peak of curiosity is around four-ish. Yeah. And then it's on a steady downward, steady down. One of the first things I do with when I'm working with exec teams, when we come together, I don't give them any warning about this at the start of a day, and I get them to do some reflective stuff. But then I say to them, okay, we're together for the day. This is starting maybe a process that we're working together, or maybe it's really just a day to sort of crack things open. What's a curious question that you have for everyone else in the room about this team or about the work that you do? And then I said, I'm going to give 5 minutes to do, the things, but the questions, we really need to, we're going to collate them together. And because it's a question without notice, people sort of sit there and go, some people find it really hard to actually pose that curious question to others. And some people start writing an essay. And so I have to go, okay, so what I want you to make sure is you truncate all your thinking into a really concise, snappy question to be able to say to your colleagues, I'm going to put it up so it's visible. But it's amazing when we do that, the big themes around what they're all actually worried about internally, but not necessarily speaking, start coming out. So that lens of curiosity at the start, too many of us, myself included, can get into this rut where we are not super curious about, well, tell me more about what you think there, or I'm curious about your aspect that you just talked about there, or tell me more about that. So yeah, I'm with you in terms of it being a superpower. Can I just put in something that was really interesting? a colleague of mine that I know on LinkedIn, Tammy Bart. So she's a wonderful educator, especially in the realms. She is a very proud Indigenous woman of bringing cultural understanding to the world. And she did a really interesting post the other day that I'm actually just about to repost around curiosity, and for the Indigenous, many people in the Indigenous space in Australia who come from an Indigenous background find that curiosity, the ability to give you the trust so that you are able to be curious about me, needs to be absolutely not something that I give freely. So that we can't assume that people actually want our curiosity, and that it needs to be basically that trust is given for that to happen. And I thought, wow, that's a great insight. That, because from a normal lens, people go, oh, I feel curious, I feel like I'm being nosy, right? So that's just us in general, land. But this deeper insight that she gave us around that, don't always take it for granted that you can ask me questions around things, that we need to have a connection. And I thought, fascinating. I really need to be more curious and find more out about that.
It reminds me of a presentation I'm preparing that I'll be running in Orlando in a couple of weeks' time around, they've asked me to talk about networking. And the more I deeply think about a topic, and I'm sure maybe you go through this process as well, when you've got a keynote coming up, all of it's like when you want to buy a red car, right? You see red cars everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking deeply and pulling back the layers of what is great networking. And what I'm landing on is exactly what you just said around the better I know somebody, the deeper I can go over time. So move from that surface level, it's no longer hand out a business card and give you elevator pitch. It's about, if I have an actual connection with you, we're more likely to do business, or you're more likely to think of me or refer me onto somebody else.
Absolutely.
So how do we do that? By building trust over time through curiosity is sort of what I'm hearing in what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is. It's a really interesting conundrum, isn't it, as well? Because I've also seen people that don't know each other share deeper things with each other
quite quickly.
And so every circumstance is different, isn't it? But I do agree with you. The more what is it that happens first? The deeper conversation builds the trust. But at the same time, being able to go there requires some trust. So, a lot of it is the environment. So for me, one of the key pillars of a really strong learning culture is, what's the environment we create? Do we have a compelling environment? So I sort of say a great culture is about three things. It's about the mind, the moment, and the mouth.
Say the last one. Say it again. The mind.
The moment. And the mouth.
The mouth.
What's coming out of our mouths. So it's based on, if the actual terminology of the architecture is the collective growth mindset, the compelling environment, and the authentic dialogue. So they're the three, terminology around it. But it's, what's going on in our minds collectively and individually. What happens in the moments between us, either the big moments or the small moments. And then what is coming out of our mouths? What's the quality of what's coming out of our mouth? And I think that environment piece is really important. Are we creating the environment for trusting conversations to happen? And I think that's what Tammy was absolutely writing about, is you can't just come in and just pepper people with questions because you want to know more about them or their background or their culture. You've actually got to sit and listen and really be immersed in creating connection and deep respect to be able to go there. And so when you do it quickly, it is about rapport, isn't it? It is about, how do we show that we really care about what the other person's thinking and talking about in that moment, so that we can go deeper.
Oh, I'm just loving this conversation. Now might be the best time, though, for me to ask, because you've just given me the three things. But in one to a maximum of three words, what do you think makes a great coach?
Safety and stretch. If we want people to be growing, if we want people to step out into that learning space, being able to have things in place that allow people to feel safe to do it is critical. So we know that psychological safety is all about that high challenge, high support. It's been hijacked in a way by a lot of people that go, you can't give me feedback, I don't feel safe. Is it that you're just feeling a bit uncomfortable? Is it that you're just feeling that actually if you delivered it better, then I would take it more on? So, which is often quite true. But are you really feeling unsafe? Now, that's not to say that there are some environments and some situations where people absolutely are feeling psychologically unsafe. And this is the work we're trying to do, is try to get leaders to actually not create that psychologically unsafe space. And I always say, the litmus test is when someone's been courageous around you, what happens for them? If they have come in and they want to disagree with you, what happens for them? Do they get shut down? Do they get invalidated? Do they lose their job? Do they get stonewalled for 2 weeks? What is it that goes on? So the litmus test is, do you step in and allow that person to have that courage and vulnerability? And then what happens next for them? Because that will teach them whether it's psychologically safe to have that voice. So being able to create the safety. So what does that look like? It's, from safety can be around, do we have structure? Have we got a protocol we're using here? Have we got a good agenda? Are we clear about our purpose? Are we asking good, curious questions? Do I feel like you've got me if I stuff up? And do we have a learning culture where stuffing up is not seen as something to punish, but something to learn from and to actually celebrate in a way, because it's given us great learning? So all of that for me is the safety. It's about, do I see you as a human being? Do I care for you? Am I here to support you and be your cheerleader? But at the same time, I'm absolutely here to stretch you, challenge your thinking, and with love, help you to be a better whatever you are wanting to grow in.
Yep. Which is the stretch piece. Yep. Absolutely. Two things now coming up as we land this episode. One is, I still have my notebook from our NLP days. Sometimes it feels like yesterday and sometimes it feels a lifetime ago. But you put together your notes in such a visual book that I still have from that course, and I still use today. It's in my drawer here.
Yeah.
Is like that visual piece. I mean, that is a skill for you to take that information and put it into visual concepts. Does that come naturally to you, and what are the benefits of that?
No, it absolutely doesn't come natural to me. And the reason I did it, when I first started doing this work, I knew that, that the general way of 5,000 PowerPoints before morning tea at a font of 14, which is what was going on back in those days, because this was 20 years ago, didn't work. I was fortunate to meet up with someone who was delivering a course that we fell in love with each other. I started doing some work with her when I started my business. Her name's Donna McGeorge, and she's a brilliant facilitator, brilliant trainer. And I started doing some work with her as well as having my own clients. And I've learned so much from her over the years. And she put me onto my first NLP trainer, James Sakalis. And at the same time, we started learning graphic facilitation, graphic recording from over in the States, from Grove Consulting, and from the International Federation of Visual Practitioners. And there's a little posse of us, Donna, Murray Burgess, Lynn Kazali and I, and others. What we started doing was bringing the technology and using it in our work. And Donna brought out a fantastic Lynn Carruthers, who was like a guru in it. And we learnt from her and we started using it all the time in our work. None of us had really ever used PowerPoints. We'd always just used flip charts, etc. And so it's just a methodology that I've built in. I started using it a lot around strategic work, around sketchnoting. So Dan Rome has a great book on sketchnoting, which is really great. But if anyone looks up graphic recording, graphic facilitation, it's really powerful. There's quite a few in that community that do coaching templates that are visual for people to use. I will always get people to see visually what we're creating. So we might do a journey map of what's gone on. I just did this on Monday with an exec team. Let's look at the last 5 years of the organisation. What are the big goals? What did we learn out of it? What were the big strategies? What were some of the really impactful people? And when we see it visually, it just does amazing things for our brain. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, it's quite amazing what you do. And open door coaching, Natalie Ashdown does a great job as well. Just the different modes, isn't it, or modalities for us to maximize that learning environment, which really came through very strong in this episode. And I guess from a tennis perspective, I love the title of your new book, Bounce Forward. So
I thought you would.
Yeah, can you please share a little bit about what's to come and what's next for you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm right in the middle of it. And so these sort of conversations are always great when you're writing a book because it really helps to crystallize some of the things that you're thinking about and that you're being asked, or that your insights and things. But so it's about anti-fragile cultures. It's about cultures. So anti-fragile is a term that was coined by Nassim Taleb. He wrote a book of the same name. And it's all about systems that get stronger through the stresses. They don't fall apart. It actually gets stronger. And if you go over to the coaching, I'm sure there's so many analogies you could make, Emma, around, the way you hit the ball. So it's an anti-fragile stroke, not a fragile one. And the difference between fragile, the opposite of fragile is not resilient. So that fragile is it breaks. The opposite is it doesn't break at all. It gets stronger. Whereas resilience is, if you think of, is about bounce back. Whereas this anti-fragile approach is we bounce higher and forward. There's more propel, and it really still comes back to it's the bounce of the collective around what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's the environment to be able to have that well-being and that thriving built in, and the systems that help that. And it's the deep curiosity and action that comes out of the conversations and the looking at what we're doing that gives us the bounce to bounce forward in whatever we're achieving. So
as a collective.
Yeah, as a collective. So it's really the culture that gets us there. And of course, within that sits Ferocious Warmth leadership of really being able to bring the head and the heart, the results and the relationships, not being okay with mediocrity in either, bringing them both together to do extraordinary things.
Well, Tracey, you and I could talk forever, of course. We didn't even touch on you riding Harley Davidsons and ex-recorder player and owning a bar in Indonesia. But maybe you might have to come back on the show because honestly, I'd love to even watch you facilitate one day. It's an honor and a pleasure, just with love and kindness in my heart, and balancing my head of thoughts around telling a story about what makes your soul or what brings you joy. Everybody listening to this, share a story within the next 24 hours that brings you joy. Be curious, park your ignorant truth, or have it be more in your conscious awareness. And remember, a strong culture is all about the mind plus the moment plus the mouth for us to be able to be ferocious leaders with warmth. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Great synthesis. Great synthesis.
Summary. I think it was a beautiful Malteser episode, and I truly appreciate you, Tracey. Thank you for being in my life.
Emma, you bring joy wherever you go. Every time we interact, there's just joy and energy. I just get so much energy from talking with you. I would love to come on this podcast again and interview you, actually, because I think that your brilliance and wisdom in the world is extraordinary. And so there you go. I'd like to introduce.
You've heard it. I think that might be a real possibility. So thank you, coaches, for listening and always staying curious.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating review on your podcast listening device. And don't forget to tell a fellow coach about the show. The ball is in your court to take action and enjoy your coaching.